Good morning po, classmates. Good morning, Sir Easy. We are Group 3 and we will be presenting ecosystems, discussing Lotic ecosystems for you today.
Okay, so first of all, we would be exploring the major river systems in the world. So we would humbly appreciate if you will participate. So yun po. So ito po, first topic. Gagawin po natin para siyang icebreaker. So guess the river game. So simple lang yung mechanics. May ipapakita po kami picture or may i-ask po kaming question. And all you need to do is, if you know the answer, you chat box. Or kung mahaba yung sagot, mamaya, pwede po kayo mag-raise ng hand. So, yun lang. Start na po tayo. Next slide, please. Of first river system. So, yung sa picture, kita nyo? Kulay dilaw yung tubig. So, malaking clue po yan. Tapos, China, yung best friend natin. Ito una po, is shown in the pictures. So, 3, 2, 1, go. Kahit may sumagot na, sige. Okay, so may nakita po tayo, Yangtze at Yellow River. So, yung tama pong sagot ay actually ay yung Yellow River or yung Huanghe River o yung Chinese name niya. So makita niyo po, yellow siya. So Yellow River. So the river is historically important because it is considered as the mother river of China or the birthplace of Chinese civilization. But it also has another nickname, which is the China's sorrow, due to the floodings that it has caused throughout the history of China. And just in 1931, a flood by the Huanghe River killed 3.7 million people, 5,464 kilometers long. What is its ranking in the world's longest rivers? Clue, nasa top 10 siya. So, pumili na lang kayo ng isang number doon. So, 3, 2, 1, go. Answer, sige. Second. Yun. So, yung right answer po natin ay 6 po. So, siya yung second longest sa China. Tapos yung longest, dadaanan natin siya mamaya. Pero 6 po ang Huanghe River. So Huanghe River starts from the Bayanhar mountain range of the Kunlun Mountains. So ito po yung headwater, dito siya. And siya nagpo-flow sa isa pang body of water ay nasa Bohai Sea na nagpo-form nung Huanghe Delta. Yung delta, yung parang land formation, ito po yung last question natin sa Huanghe River. What sediment makes the Yellow River yellow? So, sige, search muna. Specific dapat. So, 3, 2, 1, go. Sige, sagot. Kailangan po natin mas specific. Letter L po ang simula niya. Letter L. Oh, may nakatama po si Audrey Nicole. Ang sagot po ay lowest. So, yung dahilan po nun, kasi po yung Yellow River ay nagpapas po sa lowest plateau. Nagawa nga sa lowest. And dahil po sa erosion and weathering, yun nga, humalo na siya sa tubig at nag-cause na magdilaw ang tubig. So, yun po ang Huanghe River. So, next river po tayo. Next slide, please. Yun. So, ayan, malaking clue, Brazil. So, tingin ko alam na natin yan, South America. Pero ito, what major river system is in the picture? So, 3, 2, 1, go. Madali lang yan. Yung Amazon. Yan. So, Amazon River. So, the length of the Amazon River is between 6,259 kilometers and 6,800 kilometers long. And it is actually considered as the second longest river in the world. Right after nung isa, nadadaanan din natin mamaya. So the Amazon headwaters are located in the Peruvian Andes Mountains. Specifically, the rivers such as the Marañon, the Apurimac, and the Mantaro. So next question. Where does the Amazon River empty to, or where is the mouth of the Amazon located? So nandiyan sa picture, dalawa lang pagpipilian nyo. Nasa picture lang siya. So 3, 2, 1, go. Yun. So, tama. That's correct. Atlantic. So, alam po natin yung Peru to Brazil, yan po yung direction ng Amazon in general. So, from west to east. So, pag nakita nyo east, Atlantic Ocean. So, dyan po yung mouth ng Amazon sa may dulo ng Brazil. So, next question. Unlike the Yellow River, it is said that the Amazon doesn't have a true delta, yung land formation kanina sa Yellow River. So, yung tanong natin ngayon, bakit? So kung binasa niyo po yung pinabasa ni Sir Papa, masasagot niyo po 'to. Pero yun po. Kung gusto niyo po sumagot, mag-raise na lang po kayo ng hand kasi medyo mahaba po yung sagot. Hala, di nagbasa. Or kung gusto niyo rin i-type, sige lang po sa chat box.
Neal, baka pwede magtawag ka na lang.
Magtatawag ako? Ikaw magtawag, James. Suggestion, ikaw na magtawag.
Class number 1, si Agawili.
Nasa laboratory. Sige, Jester. Kung alam ba natin. Hello, Jester.
No idea.
Wait lang, may sumagot po sa chat. Nasaan na? Yun, yung sagot po ni Dimple ay in a sense tama po siya, pero may kulang po na part. May kulang pong onte. Sobrang onti lang. James, magtawag ka uli, James.
Miss Noel po.
Sige, Rihanna. What's the answer?
Hindi ko rin alam.
So,
Ah,
may problema po tayo. Oh,
mag-try po.
sino yun? Sige, sagot.
Agkawili po.
Go.
Okay. Wala siyang delta dahil sa strength po ng tides and currents papuntang Atlantic. And dahil doon, nape-prevent po yung pag-build up ng sediment.
Exactly, Mr. Agkoili. So, meron din sa chat sumagot sila Eunice and Camille. But yes, the answer is because the Amazon flows into the Atlantic, which is turbulent and has enough wave and tidal energy to carry the sediments into the sea. So, madaling salita, hindi nakakasettle yung sediment kasi masyadong malakas yung tubig sa Atlantic. So, doon po nagtatapos ang Amazon. Next river system po. Next slide, please.
Hi, sorry, Neal.
Ito.
No? Sorry, Neal, to interrupt.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but you can go. May you please go back to the previous slide? No, because it's interesting that you added this picture. Maybe your classmates are also wondering ano yung picture na yon. Could you go back to the previous slide, Iho? No. Yung isa, previous.
Yung ano po ba?
Amazon
Dolphin?
River. Yeah, yes. Kindly highlight the importance or significance of this picture sa Amazon River.
I added this picture because it is one of the most famous inhabitants of the Amazon River. And this is the boto, or the Amazon River dolphin, or known by its scientific name, Inia geoffrensis. So minsan makita siya pink, pero ito medyo gray na siya. So yun po.
Alright, very good. So yan,
next.
magandang ma-highlight niyo yan. Thank you.
Okay po. Next slide, please. So ito, medyo madali din to. Kita nyo na, Egypt, Africa. So malamang alam nyo na to. So question, what major river system is shown in the pictures? 3, 2, 1, go. Alam ng lahat. So yun, tama po kayo. Ito po ay ang Nile River, which is considered as the longest river in the world at 4,258 miles or 6,853 kilometers long. But although the exact length is still debatable up to this day. So next question. The Nile has two major branches or tributaries. What are they? So bigyan ko yung clue. Nasa cheer siya ng science. At kulay ang sagot. So 3, 2, 1, go. What? Alam nila. So yun, tama po kayo. Ang sagot po ay ang White and Blue Nile. So the source of the longer White Nile is Lake Victoria, which is the largest lake in Africa. And the source of the shorter Blue Nile is Lake Tana, which is in Ethiopia. And the two Niles, the white and the blue, meet at Khartoum, Sudan. Makita niyo po dyan sa picture. Doon sa baba, na makita niyo po yung White Nile, medyo mas brownish yung water niya, medyo mas light. And yung Blue Nile is mas dark. Parang nagre-range, parang medyo blue to black na. So, next question, related dito sa picture sa pinakakanan. Yung mahilig sa mythology dyan, baka makasagot kayo. In ancient Egypt, annual flooding in August was celebrated and associated with the arrival of Hapi, the god representing harvest and fertility. Why? So yung clue dito ay yung keywords, harvest and fertility. And ano ba ang dinadala ng ilog, yung pagbabaha nito sa Egypt o dun sa surrounding area. So pwede po kayong magtaas ng kamay o gusto niyo po i-type. So answer lang po. Irrigation, pwede. Pero meron pang importance. Isa pang so yun po, si Miss Ann Parahinog, tama po sinagot niya. Ang sagot po ay yung fertile soil. So the arrival of Hapi, also known as the flooding, provided silt and fertile soil that allowed the growing of crops. So yun po yung nag-allow sa mga Egyptians na magpatubo ng halaman dun sa area nila. So yun po yung significance ng flooding sa Nile River. So next, river system please. So nagbabalik po tayo sa China, sa best friend natin. So malamang alam niyo na po yung sagot at pinagsasagot niya to kanina. But ito yung tanong, what major river system is shown in the pictures? So 3, 2, 1, go. So yes, the correct answer po is the Yangtze River. And this is considered as China and Asia's longest river at 6,300 kilometers of length. So next question. In terms of length, what is the rank of Yangtze in the world's rivers? Clue, nasa top 10 siya uli. So 3, 2, 1, go. So tama po kayong lahat. Third po ang Yangtze River. So after po ng Nile and after po ng Amazon ay yung Yangtze River na. So the river is home to a possibly extinct dolphin species, ayun po sa picture, called the Lipotes vexillefer or the baiji. So yung extinction po niya ay attributed po dun sa human activities dito sa area na to. So the source of the river is from the Qinghai province, from the Ulan-Morn River, formed from the Tangula Mountains glacial meltwaters. So doon po yung headwaters niya, yung natutunaw ng mga glacier dun sa mountains na yun. So last question. Where does the Yangtze River empty to or where is its mouth? So medyo obvious just sa picture pero walang label. Pero clue, cardinal direction ang sagot. So 3, 2, 1, go. Yun. So tama po. Ang sagot po ay ang East China Sea. So yung kanina po yung sa Yangtze, ay sa Huanghe, ang mouth po niya ay lumalabas sa Bohai Sea. Ito naman pong Yangtze ay lumalabas po sa East China Sea. So yun po tandaan niyo. And as a bonus information, the Yangtze River is also known for the Three Gorges Dam. Ayun po yung picture sa baba. The world's most powerful hydroelectric dam in the world. So that ends our game of Guess the River.
Okay, so good morning, classmate. Good morning, guys. Good morning, sir. Now let's focus on the physical, chemical, and biological characteristics of a Lotic ecosystem. Unlike Unlike a lentic ecosystem, which has a variety of water flows with no particular direction, a lotic system's water flow is one direction from upstream to downstream. Because it cuts into the channel, the lotic ecosystem are shallower on average and are narrower and longer. Also, due to the steady flow, Lotic has a shorter water retention time, and the top and bottom waters are normally the same temperature due to the constant mixing. Next slide, please. So, other physical characteristics that we must remember are currents and stream pattern, suspended solids, and light and temperature. First, let's focus at current and stream patterns. The velocity of a current in flowing or running water is determined by the gradient and substrates, and unlike lentic waters, wind has little effect on currents in running waters. The current of a running water also influences the ecological distribution, morphological adaptations, and an organism's behaviors. Moreover, within stream channels, the water velocity varies as well. As we travel down a little stream, we come across some shallow sections where the bottom's effect may be observed on the flowing water surface. Next slide, please. These turbulent shallow areas are called riffles. For the deep areas with relatively low water velocity, they are called pools, and runs for the areas with rapidly moving water but are smooth surface. Pools tend to accumulate the sediments, and runs have coarser substrata. A section of the river with several runs, pools, and riffles is called a reach. Furthermore, there are different stream patterns. So let's try to identify what stream patterns are shown in the next slide. Pwede po kayo mag-chat or mag-on ng mic if you want to answer po. So for the pattern number 1, what stream pattern is that po? Okay, yes, tama. Dendritic po. So dendritic patterns are the most common pattern for streams po. It occurs frequently in nature. What is the next pattern po? Correct. The pattern is parallel. It forms in young, steep terrain where streams do not have the opportunity to migrate sideways. Kaya naging parallel siya. So the next pattern, which is number 3. Okay. Yes, trellis po. Trellis are forms in folded mountains like Appalachians in North America. So the next one po, number 4. Okay, rectangular. Number 5. Okay, angular. Okay, so sa angular, it formed when streams radiate outward from an isolated mountain peak. So mostly, nakikita siya sa volcanic islands. The last pattern. Okay, contorted. Contorted patterns usually formed in a disturbed area. So kanina na-discuss na natin yung currents and stream pattern. Now let's proceed sa suspended solids. Erosion, transportation, and deposition of solid materials within a running water is closely linked to current velocity. The primary source of organic waste in suspended form in the river is litter. Inorganic particles such as silt, detritus, and items extracted from sediments are examples of suspended matter that cause turbidity in the water. Moreover, penetration of light in running water is strongly influenced by the turbidity. In addition to scattering by particles, there is also a loss due to absorption by water. If water is clear or hollow, adequate light can reach the substrate and photosynthesis can take place. For the temperature of lotic water naman, it is influenced by many factors, and they include origin, depth, substrate, tributaries, exposure, and time of the day. Also, the contribution of surface and groundwaters to the flow of stream varies according to a number of factors, especially local geology and climate. Next slide, please. And now let's proceed to the chemical characteristics of a lotic ecosystem. So of the dissolved gases present in running waters, oxygen is the most abundant and important. The amount of oxygen that is present in water is called dissolved oxygen. So why is it important? It is important since it serves to deliver oxygen-rich water to respiratory structures. While fish can actively move water over gills, most invertebrates cannot and are dependent on current to deliver oxygen. One common cause of decreased dissolved oxygen is temperature. As you can see in the graph, as temperature becomes warmer, the water oxygen content decreases because higher temperatures may cause other chemical or biological reactions to occur that consume or use up the existing oxygen content of the water faster than it can be reintroduced to the solution through diffusion or mixing. Aside from temperature, too many bacteria and an excess amount of biological oxygen demand is one of the factors that contribute to the decreased dissolved oxygen. Aside from the two, excessive algae growth, also caused by phosphorus, is also one contributing factor. Other chemical properties of a river and stream are acidity, ability to neutralize acid, nutrients, metals, and other constituents. For the acidity, neutral pH is 6.5 to 8.5 and 7.4 as optimum pH for river water. Furthermore, in the absence of human influence, the water chemistry is determined by the soils and rocks in the watershed, the chemistry of the precipitation in interaction with plants and animals on land and in the water. It profoundly affects and is affected by aquatic organisms. Next slide, please. Lastly, there is a large variety of organisms in running waters, from microbes and fungi to higher plants and from protozoans to vertebrates such as fishes and mammals, in which these organisms are interconnected to form a food web. In the figure, the food relationships are commonly observed among stream biota. As you can see, primary producers use energy from sunlight to turn dissolved inorganic nutrients, such as nitrogen, phosphorus, or carbon, into organic matter through photosynthesis. Organisms that feed on this plant tissue convert it to animal tissue, waste, and energy, and the composition of organic materials occurs as the other organisms break down dead plant and animal tissue and waste. The relationship between the rate of primary production and the rate of decomposition influences the availability of habitat for stream biota. So there are two types of stream reach based on this relationship. So let me just ask you, how will you describe the stream reach if the primary production exceeds decomposition? And how about if decomposition exceeds primary production? So, on mic na lang po or sa chat box if you know the answer. So, anyone know the answer? Okay. So there are two types of stream reach based on the relationship of primary production and decomposition. So how will you describe the stream reach if the primary production exceeds decomposition? And how about if decomposition exceeds primary production?
Rinig po ako.
Yes.
Yung stream reach po na if the primary production exceeds decomposition is autotrophic, while kapag decomposition exceeds primary production, it is heterotrophic po.
Okay, yes, that's correct. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chen. So, yun po, uulitin ko lang. Autotrophic ang stream reach if the primary production exceeds decomposition, and if decomposition exceeds primary production naman, it is heterotrophic. So going back in the figure, organisms that feed directly on non-living coarse particulate organic matter include bacteria, fungi, and some invertebrates known as shedders. These organisms proliferate in forested headwater streams where the detritus is plentiful and where the substrate allows for attachment. Other organisms, such as scrapers and grazers, feed directly on primary producers and thrive where the plants they feed on are most abundant. Both shredders and producers and scrapers produce fine particulate organic material, bits of shredded and partly decomposed detritus and waste. Invertebrates that feed on the fine particulate organic material flourish in lowland reaches where they collect food supplied by upstream activities. So fish and other vertebrates or predators feed on collectors, shredders, and other invertebrate predators. So next slide. So that's all for my part.
So earlier, different major river systems in the world have been introduced to us. And in order to understand how Lotic ecosystem works, we need to dig deeper into the concept. So to begin with, Lotic ecosystems involve moving waters such as these riverine systems which constitute the continuum of changing environments. So dito sa slide na to, wait lang James, balik ulit. Thank you. So dito sa slide na to, may image na nakalagay sa gilid, although design lang talaga dapat yan. Pero at least there are two patterns na makikita dyan. So anyone who can describe those visible patterns? Pwedeng chat box or on Mr. Calizo. Hey there.
Hello, am I audible po ba? Hello,
Yes.
hello.
Yes.
Okay. So, based from the figure, one thing that I can observe is as the river goes wider as parang the more it goes downstream po. So, sa upstream po medyo di po siya ganun ka lawak unlike sa downstream. And another thing I noticed rin is yung vegetation po, paunti po siya ng paunti as the river goes downstream. Yun lang po.
Yes. So, tama yan. Thank you for answering. Yeah. So for this slide, you can see the illustration of the river continuum concept predictions that was proposed by Van Noot and his colleagues in 1980. So as we can see, there are changes that take place along the river gradient as water travels from the headwater streams flowing into the midstream until it gets downstream to the larger rivers. So in this concept, we say na the stream size as the stream size increases, the influence of the surrounding forest decreases. Next slide, please. So, ayan. Given yung kanina na sinabi ko na as the stream size increases, the influence of the surrounding forest decreases. Try nating i-classify yung mga river systems. So, sinong gustong mag-try kung hanapin dyan yung headwater, midstream, at saka yung downstream? Try lang. So, huwag kayong mahiya.
Hello po. Hello. Try lang po. Narinig po ba ako?
Yes, go lang po.
Yung ano ba, tama po ba na source tsaka mouth yung puhulaan or yung upstream downstream?
Yung sige, first muna yung headwater.
Yung B po.
And
tapos yung F yung or puro headstream ba?
Try mo
Water
muna
ba?
yung headwater streams.
B, C, E? Yun? B, C, E?
Sige. Ay, may iba bang gustong mag-try magsagot? I think si Aki yata nag-raise naman.
Yung downstream na ako. Kahit yung mga muna, yung mga yung ibang question. Yung isang first question mo muna. Doon ako sa second question.
Sige, go Aki yung second question.
Sige, sorry. So, try ko lang. Yung mga, I'll try guessing each. Is that okay? Or isa-isa lang? Yung A, I think it's, for me, that looks like downstream na because it's very wide. Yung B, it looks like it's a midstream for me. Yung C, it looks upstream. And then So bale, downstream yung A, B is midstream, C is upstream. D looks like a midstream for me. E looks like an upstream, and F also looks like a midstream.
Midstream?
Yeah, yung F.
May gusto pa bang mag-try? Last try? Or wala? Go at.
Yung A, tama, parang downstream. Tapos yung B for me is para siyang upstream kasi mabilis pa yung flow ng water. Tapos C is upstream then D midstream. Tapos E is para siyang bundok. So, upstream. Tapos F downstream.
Okay, so next slide. Ito na yung sagot. Yeah. So, ba't hindi kayo nalito dun sa headwater na sa baba? Pero, kasi kung ang concept na sasabihin natin is yung about sa vegetation, na, yung increasing stream size, decreasing influence of forest. Yung isa dito sa headwater, yung nasa baba, parang hindi mo siya makikitaan ng vegetation. But still, headwater pa rin siya. Ayan. It's a case ng alpine regions, grasslands, or savanna. So, syempre, hindi nag-a-apply doon yung forested area as headwaters. So, yeah, buti hindi kayo nalito doon. And then, ayan, so for that, hindi tayo masyadong magbe-base sa vegetation, but we can still use stream orders to classify or order the hierarchy of natural channels. Kasi parang partner sila in the river continuum concept. Next slide, please. Yan. So, the commonly used method in stream ordering is this Taylor method, which is dependent on the number of tributaries. Wherein yung mga lines na nandito, na nakita niyo sa gilid, yung may number 1, corresponds to headwaters. So, kapag mataas na yung number, lumalawak na yung river system. So, the more it goes downstream. Ayan. So, balik ulit tayo sa diagram. So, ayan, makikita ulit natin na yung headwaters may rich vegetation. Therefore, autotrophic production is reduced and there is a large amount of allochthonous detritus. So, dito makikita natin yung mga shredders and collectors sa macroinvertebrate community. So, as it goes midstream, the water becomes more exposed to sunlight, which contributes to the increase in autotrophic production. So, sa midstream naman, nandun pa rin yung collectors. Pero, nag-exist na yung mga tracers, dumadami na sila. And then, continuing further downstream, nag-accumulate na yung mga sediments sa ilalim. So, yung primary production, nagiging limited siya ng water depth and turbidity, which inhibits naman yung light penetration. So, again, sa macroinvertebrate community, andun ulit yung collectors. And in downstream, andun na rin yung plankton.
Sorry, Ritchel, to butt in. No? I think it would be nice and helpful for your classmates if you can highlight what do you mean when we speak of allochthonous detritus or allochthonous food source? What's that?
Ayan. So yung allochthonous refers to the sediments originating from a place other than where it was found. So, ang example nun is yung mga leaf litters. So, syempre, hindi naman sila galing from the ground. So, nahuhulog lang sila. So, that is allochthonous detritus.
Okay, thank you.
So, before we move on, let us first differentiate a river from a stream. So let us take some time to watch this 4-minute video for us to better understand some terms and concepts of Lotic ecosystems. So James, please play the video.
Rivers change the land through which they flow. They give us water to
Naririnig po
drink,
yung audio.
energy.
Yes, we can hear it.
Yep.
Okay.
We convert to electricity and a place for plants and animals to live. Put in your ore and check it out. Most rivers start with rain or snow. As snow melts or as rain falls, the water collects together and runs downhill. When enough water gets together, it's called a creek. Creeks form into streams, and streams form into rivers. Some rivers come from springs, underground sources of water that bubble up or spill out.
Come aboard. I'm Steve. This is the Thousand Spring stretch of the Snake River. From here it goes through, strike up to the Columbia River in northern Idaho.
Rivers, like the Snake, have two banks. An outer bank is more worn away. The water carries away the rocks and sand, depositing it on the bottom of the river. That's called the river bottom. The water can also deposit the dirt and rocks on the inner bank. This constant moving of rock and dirt is called erosion.
Have you ever wondered why a river rock is so smooth? Well, the river tumbles the rock round and round, wearing off all the sharp edges. That's erosion too.
These rounded rocks over here are called melon rocks. They came down with the flood, being tumbled. That's how they got rounded. And they're deposited along the inner bank of the river.
The course or path of a river can erode the landscape. Slower moving waters find the easiest way to get around obstacles. That means a river's course can bend and turn. Those bends are called meanders. An oxbow happens when a river bends back on itself, forming a U shape. And waterfalls happen when a river or stream tumbles over a cliff. And did you know that glaciers are just frozen rivers of ice? Glaciers move very slowly, but like a river, they can erode away and reshape the land. Over thousands of years, a river can carve out a valley, create a canyon, or smooth out a plain. Rivers are a powerful force.
This is Blue Heart. Look down, you'll see the springs coming up.
What causes the sand to bubble?
It's the spring water finding its way out, and that's how it's coming through the sand, it's bubbling. And that blue is actually a gray sand, real fine sand. But with the spring water and the daylight makes it look blue. This is the 13th largest spring in North America. This water is always 58 degrees all year long.
The flow of the river is called its current. The faster the current, the faster the water moves. Rapids form when the hard rock underneath the riverbed slopes up or is tilted. The water flows over that uneven surface, causing it to churn, becoming whitewater. Too much water can do a lot of damage. In 1976, when the Teton Dam failed, millions of gallons of water poured out. The Teton River became a raging wall of water, wiping out whole towns. But usually, rivers are places of life.
It's an otter, all right. Don't see too many of them here.
Rivers are home to lots of different kinds of fish and birds and other wildlife. People live on the river too. Rivers are used to make electricity and for recreation. And if you're lucky enough to go with Steve on this part of the Snake, you may just get wet.
Oh yeah! Oh no, it's so fun.
If you want to learn more, head to the Science Trek website. You'll find facts, links, games, material for educators and parents, and much more. You'll find it all at sciencetrek.org.
So back to the question, what is the difference between a river and a stream? So from the video, we can get that we tend to use the term rivers for the largest bodies of these flowing waters, while we reserve streams and creeks for the smaller ones.
So living in constantly moving waters and relatively harsh environment conditions can be posed with many challenges, such as trying not to be washed away with the current. With this, organisms living in Lotic ecosystems have developed adaptations to help them deal with life in the current. Flow is the key abiotic operator in Lotic systems influencing their ecology. The strength and speed of water flow can vary across these systems, from torrential rapids to the slow backwaters. It is typically based upon the variability of friction with the bottom or sides of the channel, sinuosity, obstructions, and the incline gradient. Flowing waters can alter the shape of the stream bed through processes of erosion and deposition, creating a variety of habitats, including riffles, glides, and pools. So guys, based on the pictures that you can see on the slide, do you have an idea which type of fish body is adapted to a slow moving water and which one is for fast flowing water? Anyone?
Hello po.
Yes.
Yung nasa left po yung sa slow moving water, tapos right yung sa fast moving water.
Okay, correct. So yung sa left is dorsoventrally flat body or laterally compressed. This type of body allows crawling and clinging on substrate in slow-moving water. It also allows them to move through vegetation and to enter vertical crevices. The other one is the streamlined body form. It offers less resistance to water current. James or anyone, pansin niyo ba yung mga swimmers kapag magda-dive na sa swimming pool, naka-streamline din sila? Dito nila nakuha yon. Inobserve nila yung fish, tapos ginaya nila. Kasi kapag naka-streamline ka, less yung contact ng katawan mo sa tubig. So compared kung naka-spread yung limbs mo, mas mabilis yung paggalaw mo sa water. Ayun. Can you give also any other adaptations of organisms in rivers or streams? Like sa invertebrates, ganyan. Yes, Pau.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Siguro another example besides dun sa provide mo na adaptation of other organisms is yung sa snails and sa planarians, they have sticky undersurfaces which allows them to travel or to even cling to some substrates or stones po. Tama ba?
Yes, correct. Thank you. Next slide, please. So guys, what can you observe on the graph? Yung orange lines is yung dissolved oxygen, tapos water temperature naman yung blue. Yes, Aki.
Pansin ko na po na parang may inverse relationship sila because as mataas ang dissolved oxygen, yung temperature naman mababa. Tapos when temperature rises, bumababa naman siya. So they have DO and water temperature has an inverse relationship po.
Yes, correct. Thank you. So, sir, Lotic ecosystems, most species are poikilotherms, meaning their internal temperature varies with their environment. Thus, the temperature is a key abiotic factor for them. Water can be heated or cooled through radiation of the sun at the surface of the water and conduction from the air and surrounding substrate. Shallow streams are typically well mixed and maintain a relatively isothermal temperature within an area, while deeper, slow-moving water systems can have significant temperature differences between the surface and the bottom of the system. The amount of shading, climate, and elevation can also influence the temperature of Lotic systems. On the other hand, dissolved oxygen is the most important chemical constituent of river systems since most organisms need it for survival. It enters water mostly at the surface, but its solubility decreases as the water temperature increases, just like what Aki has explained in the table, I mean from the graph here on the screen. Fast turbulent waters expose a wider water surface to the air and tend to have lower temperatures, achieving more oxygen input than slow backwaters. Guys, can you give oxygen-related adaptations of organisms in Lotic ecosystems? Yes, Victoria.
Hello po.
Yes.
Yung try lang po, yung isda po, they can actively swim, tapos nagdo-draw sila ng water gamit yung gills nila. Yun.
Yes, correct. What about yung mga macroinvertebrates? Like na-mention kanina, hindi nila kayang nagre-rely sila sa current para magkaroon sila ng food and makakuha sila ng oxygen. So, iyon. So, in most unpolluted streams, dissolved oxygen is near saturation and is of minor biological concern. However, when oxygen levels decrease, this may signify changes in temperature, or it may indicate water circulation is poor, animal activity is high, or there is a large amount of organic decay in the waterway. Next slide, please. So inorganic matters or substrates of Lotic systems is composed of the geologic material that is eroded, transported, and deposited by the current. These substrates are classified by size from boulders, pebbles, gravel, silt, sand, and silt. Typically, particle size decreases as you go downstream with larger boulders and stones in more mountainous areas, and sandy bottoms in lowland rivers because higher gradients of mountain streams facilitate faster flow, moving smaller substrate materials further downstream for deposition. The diversity of materials making up the substrate of a stream make it complex and dynamic, since its composition plays an important role in shaping what organisms inhabit and on which substrate to spawn. Thus, the availability and distribution of particular substrate is necessary for spawning and often critical in creating suitable habitat for a particular species. So these substrates can also be organic and may include fine particles, including autumn shed leaves, submerged wood, moss, and also plants. So organic matter can be autochthonous or allochthonous. Kanina nabanggit na ni Chel yung allochthonous. So guys, can you please differentiate the two?
Hello, am I audible po ba?
Yes, Justin.
Okay, so for yung autochthonous, ito yung organic matter that is produced within the stream. So this includes diatoms, algae, and macrophytes. While allochthonous, as mentioned earlier, ito yung organic matter that is produced outside of the stream or imported into the channel. So this includes leaves, woody debris, and other compounds and dead organisms.
Very well said. Thank you for your answer, Justin. Next slide, please. For the dissolved organic matter, there are two types. There are two types of organic matter: dissolved organic matter and particulate organic matter. Dissolved organic matter are soluble organic compounds that leach from leaves, roots, decaying organisms, or other sources. It also consists of the largest pool of organic matters in streams. So, particulate organic matter it's also divided into two types. the coarse particulate organic matter and fine particulate organic matter. Do you have any idea what's the difference between the two? Coarse versus the fine. Yes, Aki. Ay,
Try lang. Ay, sorry.
sige,
Try,
go.
try lang. Yung based from the word itself, yung dissolved, so parang it's matter that's already like sort of within the water. It's already been mixed well with the water. As compared yung particulate or porous, parang ano siya, it's more visible. Parang nakikita mo pa yung pinaka-particles itself. It hasn't been, so parang it hasn't been mixed well with the entire substrate yet. So parang ganun po. Tama ba yun?
Okay. Correct po.
Thank you.
Yes, you can add, Audrey.
At tama ba yung rinig ko sa question na kung ano yung difference ng coarse and fine particulate organic matter?
Yes po.
Pag doon, based lang sa wordings ng dalawa, you can differentiate the two na yung coarse is bigger than the fine particulate organic matter. Ayun lang.
Okay, correct naman yan. So yung coarse particulate organic matter ay mga woody materials, leaves, and their fragments. So basically yung size niya is greater than 1 millimeter in diameter. Pero yung fine particulate organic matter is less than 1 millimeter in diameter. So usually these are the leaf fragments, invertebrate feces, and organic precipitates. So mga na partially decomposed na rin sila. This picture, it was explained by Asi already, but I would just like to say that this path energy follows the fate of organic matter introduced into a stream from its source. Through transport, storage, and respiration, and allows the development of a general understanding of ecosystem function and possibly efficiency if organic matter components are quantified. Generally, diversity and density of invertebrates often increase with organic matter as part of the substrate. So next slide, please. Invertebrate feeding groups and ecological roles. So benthic macroinvertebrates process organic matter within streams, making them important members of Lotic food webs. The functional roles of Lotic insects are based on their utilization of organic matter, food resources. Stream ecologies go beyond the basic ecological roles of herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, and detritivores to reflect the high degree of specialization among stream insects and create a better understanding of the stream food web. The functional feeding groups are shredders, grazers, collectors, gougers, and predators. So the shredders chew on coarse particulate organic matter, such as the leaves that fall into streams and their associated bacteria and fungi. Thus, when it is broken down and partially decomposed by microbes, it becomes part of the fine particulate organic matter. Examples of shredders are caddisflies and stoneflies. Collectors, on the other hand, we have the largest functional group, which is divided into two, the gatherers and filterers, both of which feed on fine particulate organic matter, obtaining their nutrition from the bacteria associated with the particles. Filterers obtain food by filtering water with nets or special morphological adaptations. Examples of these are the larvae of black flies with their filtering fans and the net spinning of caddisflies. Gatherers, on the other hand, collect fine particulate matter in areas where it accumulates on the stream bottom, sediments, and typically in slower flowing depositional areas of a stream. Grazers, on the other hand, feed on the algal coating of substrates. So unlike the shredders and collectors, grazers eat on algae. This includes beetle larvae, water penny, and some mobile caddisfly larvae. Gougers burrow into waterlogged trunks of fallen trees. And lastly, predators. They are animals that eat other animals. They feed on detrital feeders and grazers, and sometimes even on terrestrial invertebrates that fall into the stream. This group includes the trout, among many others. Next slide, please. So Chal already explained to us the river continuum concept. This figure sums up that discussion, and can anyone help me recall this concept? At least, can you siguro explain let's start with the size of the stream going downstream. Yes, Cardo.
Sa upstream po is mas shallow and narrower yung size ng river and sa downstream is deeper and wider po.
Correct po. Thank you. What else can you add to that? What about sa species? Sa organisms na dominate sa nagdo-dominate sa upstream, sa midstream, tsaka sa downstream. Yes, Pao.
Siguro based from the figure sa headwater streams, we can see that the number of grazers are minimal since there's a small amount of autotrophic production in that area. Siguro pag nag-shift na sa mid-order stream, doon na yung maraming collectors and grazers, and siguro yung predators din nag-shift, I guess. Tapos yung more on sa high order stream, siguro dito yung since mas slow and deep water, yung mga autotrophic and riparian production increases din. Yan.
Ang galing. Thank you. Sino pa po mag-a-add? Yes po, Camille.
Hello. Yun to add lang din po to what Pao said. Yung sa headwaters, maraming riparian vegetation, so maraming allochthonous energy, marami pong nakukuha doon ng coarse particulate organic matter, kaya mostly dominated po siya ng shredders. And as you go down po sa midstream, makikita po yung grazers and collectors. Mas marami na po yung grazers dito compared sa headwaters because meron na pong yung less na po yung riparian vegetation, so meron na po autochthonous energy dahil nagkakaroon po ng algal growth. And habang bumababa po is hindi stagnant na po yung waters sa baba, sa downstream, and kaya mas marami na po yung collectors doon. And dito na po, from coarse particulate organic matter, maging fine particulate organic matter na po, yun na po yung kino-consume ng mga collectors po. And yung predators, kakainin po nila yung mga collectors po.
Thank you. So yun, na-discuss na ng tatlong sina Rico, Pao, and Camille kung ano yung pinaka-idea ng figure na to. So the difference are a result in changes in percent canopy cover, gradient, substrate type, temperature, and other factors that necessarily change the stream's physical nature as it increases in size in its path downstream. So James, ikaw naman, can you help us with the equipment that we can use to assess stream and river ecosystems?
Why not? Here we have guessed the equipment. Here we are just going to guess the equipment. These are only short. This is only short with only like 2 equipment, and to lessen dead air, I'll be calling on people. First, what is this set of equipment? Let's see. Mr. Agawili, I know you're there. Mr. Agawili.
Multi-parameter course.
No, you're not correct. Another try. Take 2. Nandito sa left hand side, nakikita ko na yung sagot dyan. Sige, sana na. Vincent, andyan ka ba? Michael?
Yung pangalan ba nung apparatus?
Yung parang general tool nito. Ano yung tool nito?
Dissolved oxygen meter.
Nice one.
Yun.
As we all know and are familiar with, dissolved oxygen probes are tools to measure, of course, the dissolved oxygen of the body of water. To know how much dissolved oxygen is in a body of water. Next. What is this? No volunteers? Let's call Miss Suzara. Are you there?
Hi, James. Try lang. Is it for acidity?
No.
Turbidity?
Yun, yung second. Ano yung sinabi mo ulit?
Turbidity?
Yes, that is a turbidity meter. It measures the amount of light that can pass through a sample. This is useful when assessing how thick the sediments are in the body of water. Yes, okay. So next.
Wait lang, James. Sorry. It's okay. Could you go back to the previous slide, James? There, no?
Yes.
So allow me to highlight, no? At some point, medyo tama naman si Jester kanina when he referred this as a multi-parameter probe kasi yung kulay itim dyan, it's the meter itself. No? Pero tama rin kayo na dapat specific so dissolved oxygen. So I'm trying to clarify their answers as well. And then your point regarding the turbidity meter, no, it doesn't actually measure the amount of light, to be specific. No? But you are also correct that it could measure the amount of sediments, no, present in the water. No? So medyo magkaiba yun because it's hard to measure amount of light, no, in itself sa water. Okay? So perhaps another meter yung kailangan for that. No? Pero thank you for bringing this equipment up, no, para maalala naman ng mga klase mo kung paano yun, ano yung mga yan, no? Sige, go ahead, James, carry on.
Okay. And this is just a short video in stream ecology. Rinig pa yung audio?
Opo.
Okay.
Each year, USGS scientists systematically assess the ecological health and water quality conditions in streams and rivers across the United States. This research plays a vital role in land management and natural resource decisions around the country. Contrary to popular belief, these extensive data collection efforts, completed by researchers in the USGS National Water Quality Assessment Program, involve much more than just water quality.
Back when the NAQ program first started, the National Water Quality Assessment Program, they recognized the need to incorporate biology into the sampling. And so we look at the algae that's in the different streams and rivers and the bugs that eat the algae, and then also the fish that rely upon the bugs as a food source. We also look at the habitat and the water quality to see how all these different groups of organisms respond to things like nutrients, pesticides, temperature, and other stressors.
So, Steve, what I'm thinking is we don't need a 6-year-old.
What we've done is we've developed these methods that seem to work well across the nation, and so that we have standard methods, standard protocols, and so that way when we do the sampling here, we can and the same methods are used back in the East Coast or in the Midwest or whatever, that we've sampled everything in the same way, and so we can compare and combine the data sets and actually assess things nationally or regionally.
Well, the program in general is looking at watersheds across the nation in pretty large river basins, and that has provided hundreds and hundreds of sampling locations in areas of urbanization, agricultural land uses, but also in settings like this, forested ecosystems that haven't been as impacted by anthropogenic activities.
One of the things that's really important in what we call biological assessments of streams. So can we understand the conditions of streams and make a comparison between one stream and the next, is you have to know what is your reference or minimally impacted condition. If you don't know what your benchmark is, you can't then say when are things impacted or impaired, or when are things changing with climate change or with land use changes. You need to know your benchmark. All the different ecological data, the algae, the macroinvertebrates, the fish, they give us different indications of what's happening. So one of the things we're realizing is that it's important to study more than one type of biological organisms in the stream, because each one can give you a slightly different signal. The other thing is it really gives us this indication of when land use effects, or when we look at effects of agricultural land use in streams, that we see that the biological is a really good response indicator of impacts due to water quality or habitat changes or sedimentation, things like that.
When we start to see impacts from things like water pollution on the biota, we see that in a variety of different indicator species. A lot of times we'll see the diversity decline. Instead of having a food web where nutrients and light energy combine to produce a real productive stream, that we tend to see as having a healthy trout population, at least in these mountainous streams in the west. What you find is that you don't see very many trout, and the benthic invertebrate population is greatly simplified. You don't see a lot of mayflies and stoneflies and other types of food for the fish, and so that can ultimately be traced back to the water pollution.
Water quality is important to sample, but one of the problems is it's expensive, and that it is only a one-time sample. It only grabs the water and gives you assessment of what's happening at that one time. Where the biology, they live there all year long. So what you find when you're sampling, they've been living and been exposed to all the conditions that have happened all year long. And that's why the biology is a really good indicator of the whole system.
A lot of the management policy decisions that are set are driven by biocriteria, and so we look at the health of the biological communities, really the full assemblage of the fish, the bugs, and the algae, to get a full assessment of what the biota look like. But then we also collect samples and analyze water samples for nutrients and pesticides. Through the monitoring that we do and these interdisciplinary studies and multidisciplinary approaches, and we use all kinds of different modeling and multivariate statistics to tease all this stuff apart. But ultimately, it's hoped that the information that we generate can be used by management agencies that dictate things like nutrient levels that are permitted in streams, and controlling runoff and erosion and all those sorts of processes. Really, without this kind of information, where do you really even begin?
Velocity 1.8 feet per second.
To find out more about NACWA sampling efforts in your area, or to learn more about how the USGS monitors the ecological health of rivers in the United States, please visit the USGS online. Historical data from Oregon, as well as the rest of the country, can be found at our National Water Information System or at our
So that was a video on quick video on stream ecology, where they use different tools and methods to assess and monitor the water quality and the overall health of the stream. Next up is issues and problems. Like with other things, there are problems in other things as well as with regards to running water ecosystems. With the rising effect of urbanization, rivers are drastically being altered as a consequence to this action. Pollution is one problem that Lotic ecosystems face in highly urbanized areas. Human wastes and chemical pollutants can cause the acidification of water. And not only is this a threat to the ecosystem, this can also negatively affect the health of people living or working near these polluted areas. Next up is climate change, which is also a factor that can influence the Lotic ecosystems. As the waters slowly warm up and the increase in different chemicals from the human waste by littering and other chemical dumping, this can influence the increased growth of algal growth and the eventual increase in water temperature that can harm species living in the habitat. The combination of heat and other organisms can be harmful to any other living organisms. Invasive species can also become a threat to any Lotic ecosystems, as native species would not have developed defenses against these possible threats that these invasive species would bring, as these species could also bring diseases and that native species would have no defense against, as well as invasive species preying on these native species, changing the food web and altering the abundance of food sources, creating competition between species. And as you all know, Lotic ecosystems like streams and rivers are important water ecosystems, not only to us, but to other countless species as well. These ecosystems provide drinking water, irrigation to agricultural systems, and also energy production for hydroelectric power stations. This is why we have to take care of our rivers and other bodies of fresh water. That's it. Thank you for listening to Group 3 on our presentation on the Lotic ecosystems. Have a good afternoon.